Okay, so have you ever, like, stopped and thought about how we're hearing more and more about adult children, like, actually cutting ties with their parents?
Yeah, it's definitely a thing, isn't it?
It's a bit of a head scratcher, right?
For sure.
So we're diving into some really interesting articles
Uh,
today.
hmm.
One looks at this parental estrangement thing, from like a psychological view,
Hmm.
but the other one, whoa, this one really got me thinking. It looks at it through a Buddhist lens.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting take. I mean, it's definitely something that people don't always understand, and it can be, really tough on everyone involved. What's really surprising is that it's not always about like some big trauma or abuse.
Yeah, you'd think so, right?
Sometimes it's just all these complicated emotions all tangled up.
When I saw Psychology Today actually called it an epidemic, that really like hit me. An epidemic of parental estrangement. Like, whoa. They said studies show something like 26% of young adults are estranged from their dads and 6% from their moms.
Wow, that many.
I know, right? That's a ton of people. And for the parents, it can feel like it just came out of left field.
Totally blindsided, yeah. And I can imagine that just makes it even harder, to deal with.
It's like another layer of hurt on top of everything else. So this article, it talks about this whole generational thing with parenting styles, and it's kind of wild when you really think about it. Like, remember how our grandparents' generation, that whole greatest generation, they were all about those strict
Oh,
rules.
yeah, like children should be seen and not heard, spare the rod, spoil the child, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And you can see how that would make kids like kind of afraid of their parents. Not just afraid of getting in trouble, but of, messing up the relationship.
Right, it creates this environment of fear, and then the boomers came along, and it's like they did a complete 180, right?
Totally. They're like, okay, we are not doing that again.
Mm.
So they become these super involved parents, helicopter parents, all about open communication and avoiding conflict at all costs. Which, I mean, on the surface, it sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think there were some really good things about that shift. But, like anything, too much of a good thing.
For sure, for sure. There are always downsides. And that's where things get really interesting, I think, because the article, it's saying that millennials who grew up with this whole hands-on, less confrontational style, they maybe never really learned how to deal with those big, messy emotions like
Mm.
anger, disappointment, all that stuff in a healthy way with their parents.
It's like they missed out on building up that emotional resilience and those skills you need to work through conflicts.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they never really had to because someone was always there to smooth things over for them. So then fast forward to adulthood, those feelings are going to pop up, right? Like it's just life.
Right.
But now it's like they're overwhelming because they never learned how to handle them. So what happens? Estrangement becomes the solution, like a way to just avoid it all.
It's like defense mechanism almost.
Exactly. And the article even talks about how this whole dynamic is showing up in therapy now, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like therapy is becoming a reflection of this like societal aversion to conflict.
Interesting. How so?
Well, they're saying that younger therapists who were also raised by those boomers, those conflict avoidant parents, they might not be equipped to deal with patients who are, really struggling with these intense negative emotions.
Oh, I see.
So instead of guiding them towards healthy ways of processing and working through those feelings, they might accidentally be encouraging this estrangement as the answer.
Wow. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's kind of a vicious cycle, isn't it? Good intentions, but the outcome, well, it's complicated.
It really makes you think about how much our upbringing and just like what's considered normal shapes how we approach relationships, especially within families.
So we've been talking about like these generational things and how they affect families.
Right.
But now I really want to get into this whole Buddhist perspective on estrangement.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really interesting for me. It's like a whole other layer of this whole thing.
Yeah. It might seem like a big jump from, therapy and generations, but Buddhism actually has a lot to say about family dynamics,
Oh, okay.
especially these ideas of like impermanence and non-attachment and compassion.
Whoa, okay, big words. Those are some pretty big concepts. Um, I'll be honest, that whole non-attachment thing, it always makes me think of like becoming some kind of robot, like no emotions.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I get it. It's definitely one of those things that's easily misunderstood.
Yeah.
But it's not about not caring. It's more about like finding a way to love and care about people without your whole happiness depending on them,
Okay.
which, let's be real, is way easier said than done.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So how does that actually work? Like, how does this non-attachment idea play out in a situation where, like, someone's feeling all these intense emotions, like with estrangement?
Well, imagine you're like holding on to this idea of how a relationship, especially a family one, should be.
Okay.
You have this picture in your head.
Right.
And when reality doesn't match up to that, it creates suffering, you know?
Yeah. Buddhism is saying that clinging to that expectation, that fixed idea, is often what's causing the pain.
So it's more about accepting that things change, like relationships change, which is where that whole impermanence thing comes in.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Exactly. Impermanence is this, like, core Buddhist principle that says everything changes all the time. Nothing stays the same.
Right.
No matter how much we want it to.
Yeah.
And that includes our relationships, you know?
So instead of fighting that change, we can, like, embrace it, even if it hurts.
Exactly. See it as a natural part of life. And that's where compassion comes in.
But how can there be compassion when someone's feeling so hurt and rejected?
Yeah.
Like even betrayed, especially by family.
Yeah, you're right. It's really easy to get stuck in that feeling of this isn't fair.
Right.
Or how could they do this to me? But Buddhism asks us to go further, to extend compassion not just to other people, but to ourselves too.
Oh, interesting. So like acknowledging your own pain and letting yourself feel those feelings.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then realizing that sometimes creating distance, even if it seems counterintuitive, can actually be an act of compassion.
For everyone involved.
Yeah, for everyone.
You're saying, like, by letting go of that person, that relationship, it doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're choosing to, I don't know, like, protect yourself
Mm-hmm.
and maybe create space for healing.
Exactly. For both of you, potentially. It's like that saying, if you love something, let it go.
Yeah.
Sometimes giving someone this space to figure things out on their own without that pressure or judgment is the most compassionate thing you can do.
That's wild. I never thought of it like that. Not as giving up, but as, like, this radical acceptance and compassion. It's making me think about a lot of things. So we've been talking about this whole letting go thing, as a form of compassion.
Right.
But this other article, the one about parental estrangement through that Buddhist lens, it's like, whoa, hold on a minute. Is walking away always the answer?
Yeah, it's like Buddhism is always encouraging us to question everything, right? Even our assumptions. And this article, it really makes you think, like, could this need to avoid suffering by, stepping away from a relationship, could that actually be its own kind of attachment?
It's like, are we really letting go? Or are we just clinging to something else?
Right.
Even if that something else is like wanting a peaceful life without all the drama.
Exactly. And Buddhism is all about mindfulness, right?
Yeah.
Like really looking at why we do the things we do.
Yeah.
So are we acting from a place of like genuine compassion? Or is there some anger mixed in there? Some resentment? Maybe even a little bit of like wanting to punish the other person?
Ooh, that's deep.
It's not always easy to sit with those questions.
Yes, no kidding.
But it's so important if we want to make choices that, line up with our values.
That's so true. What really got to me in this article was this idea that those like really tough relationships, the ones that make you want to pull your hair out, those might be the ones with the most potential for growth. It's
Yeah.
kind of wild when you think about it.
Yeah, it's like those challenges, those are our greatest teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that estrangement, even though it hurts, maybe it's like the universe's way of saying, hey, you need to work on this.
Right. And,
Yeah.
and Buddhism, it teaches us that real compassion, it doesn't come from avoiding suffering. It comes from like leaning into it, engaging with it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And those difficult relationships, those can be the things that help us learn patience, forgiveness, and really understanding ourselves and other people better.
It's like, what if that relationship that's causing you so much pain, what if that's actually your biggest opportunity to learn about compassion? That's intense.
This article, it also talks about karma and how everything is connected. Our choices, they don't happen in isolation.
Right.
So cutting someone off, it might seem like a way to like protect yourself from getting hurt.
Right.
But it actually creates these ripples that affect everyone,
Yeah.
Everyone in that web of relationships. It's a lot to wrap your head around, right?
It really is. So where does that leave us? Like, are we supposed to walk away or are we supposed to stay and try to work things out?
And that's the beauty of it, right? The middle way.
The middle way.
Yeah, it's a big concept in Buddhism. It's not about picking one extreme or the other.
Okay.
It's about finding that balance, that wisdom to see that there aren't always easy answers.
Yeah.
that we can hold on to both of those truths at the same time.
I like that. The middle way. It makes sense because there's no way to have one answer for everyone, you know?
Right.
When it comes to family, it's just so personal. Everyone's different.
Exactly. But those Buddhist ideas, like impermanence, non-attachment, compassion, those can be really helpful tools, no matter what your situation is. Like just understanding that nothing stays the same, they can be really powerful.
Yeah. It's like it can be comforting and empowering at the same time. And
Yeah.
even if you don't feel like you can forgive someone, just that little bit of compassion for yourself or for them, it can make a difference.
Absolutely. And remember, compassion doesn't mean you're saying what happened was okay.
Right.
It's just about seeing that shared humanity, even in the people who hurt you.
This whole deep dive has been quite a journey. We went from like how parents raise their kids to like the meaning of compassion. We even talked about how those tough relationships, maybe those are the ones that can teach us the most.
It just goes to show you, looking at things from different angles, you can learn so much.
Totally. And for everyone listening, we'll leave you with this. Could looking at estrangement through this Buddhist lens, even if it's not your thing, even if you don't like agree with everything, could it maybe offer a new way to think about healing and growth? Not just for yourself, but for your whole family. It's something to think about as you figure out your own relationships.